Today's story is adapted from a Middle Eastern Islamic folktale, which is attributed to different countries, including Turkey and Syria. It's a story of Mullah Nassreddin, who is a traditional folk character in wisdom tales from the Muslim world. This morning's lesson takes place during Ramadan, a month-long period of fasting that Muslims observe each year. The end of the month is celebrated with great feasts with friends and family, not unlike our U.S. observance of Thanksgiving. Let's see what happens to Mullah Nassreddin today. Mullah Nassreddin had been working in the fields all day. He was tired and sweaty, and his clothes and shoes were covered with mud and stains. Because he had been fasting all day long for Ramadan, he was also quite hungry. But finally, it was almost sundown, and Nassreddin knew he would soon be able to eat. The wealthiest man in town had invited everyone to come break their fast in his home that evening with a huge feast. Nassreddin knew that he would be late if he went home to change his clothes before heading into town. He decided it was better to arrive dirty in his old clothes rather than be late. Oh, what a party it would be! What a feast! As he walked to the wealthy man's home, Nassreddin imagined the delicious foods he would soon be eating. Dates, lentils and chickpeas, olives and bread, hummus, falafel, chicken and beef, and best of all, the desserts. Halva, date rolls, figs, and baklava. The wealthy man opened the door and looked Nassreddin up and down scornfully, from his worn, ragged clothes to his muddy shoes. Without a word of welcome, he gestured for Nassreddin to come in and walked abruptly away. Nassreddin joined the throngs of people who were all dressed in their finest clothing. The tables were laden with all sorts of delicious foods. Do you remember the list? The dates, the lentils and chickpeas, olives and bread, hummus, falafel, chicken and beef, and the best of all, the desserts. The halva, the date roll, the figs, and baklava. Now, Nassreddin had hurried. He had arrived in his dirty clothes because he wanted to be on time for this fabulous feast. But despite all of his efforts, all the seats were taken, and nobody would move over to give him any room. In fact, no one even offered him any food. He had to reach over and around people to get any food for his plate. And no one spoke to him. It was if he wasn't even there. How do you think that made Nassreddin feel? Bad, yeah. The other guests ignored him so completely that Nassreddin could not even enjoy the delicious food on his plate, no matter how finely prepared and tasty it was. In fact, after only a few bites, Nassreddin was so uncomfortable that he decided to leave. He hurried home and he changed into his finest clothing, including a beautiful coat and a dapper hat. Nassreddin returned to the feast, and this time the host welcomed him in with a huge smile. Come in, greeted the host. As Nassreddin entered, people waved and called to him from all corners of the room, and they invited him to sit near them and offered him food. So Nassreddin had been warmly welcomed into the feast that day. He decided to sit down quietly, and he picked up a plump orange, and he carefully placed it into his coat pocket, saying, "Eat. Eat, coat, eat. Eat, coat, eat." Next, he took a handful of nuts, or maybe an apple or a sweet potato, and he put them in his pocket, saying, "Eat, coat, eat." And now he began to feed his coat in earnest, grabbing all sorts of foods. He fed the coat lentils and chickpeas, olives and bread, hummus, falafel, chicken and beef, and best of all, the desserts, the halva, the date rolls, the figs, and Tom's favorite, clearly, baklava. The guests became silent as they watched this strange behavior. Soon, everyone in the room was staring at Nassreddin, wondering what he was doing. And the host hurried over. "Nassreddin, what are you doing? Why are you feeding your coat in this manner?" "Well," replied Nassreddin, "when I first came to this feast in my old farming clothes, I was not welcome. No one would speak with me. But when I changed into this coat, suddenly I was greeted warmly. So I realized it was not me that was welcome at this party, but my clothing. And so I am feeding my coat." How do you think the guests felt then? How do you think his coat felt? Full, very full. I wonder if it was fair or kind that people wouldn't speak to Nassreddin until he wore his fancy clothes.